Hi everybody, Al from EGW here. Today I wanted to show you guys how to install one of our EGW ignition kits in the Springfield Prodigy. We get asked all the time, how do you install the ignition kit, or any tips and tricks, and how difficult is it? It's a pretty simple process. It can be a little bit time consuming. As of all of our parts, we always recommend having a qualified and competent gunsmith install them, but a lot of customers of ours are able to install them at home. So let's dig in here. We'll show you how to strip down the grip module first, and then we're going to change out the mainspring and the mainspring housing, and then we're going to go ahead and build it back up with our EGW parts and hopefully get a lot better trigger pull than what this thing came with from the factory. So the first thing that we're going to do in the breakdown process is we're going to remove your ambi safety. We have factory parts in here. We're going to remove the ambi. In order to do so, cock the hammer back, and then you have your up position, your down position. It's somewhere in the middle, and you want to grab it and kind of wiggle it out. Now, normally when you do that, you want to watch, because there's a spring and a detent in here for the safety, so you have that safety plunger in there. Normally goes flying across the room, so be a little bit careful. I have a 10-8 Performance Armorer's tool that I like to use, so as soon as I start to wiggle it and feel it come up, I'll get the Armorer's tool in there to stop the detent from flying out, and then pull the safety the rest of the way out. I had already lost that detent from earlier today, so it didn't go shooting out in this video. So let's pull the safety the rest of the way out. This side comes wiggle out. And now we can remove the mainspring housing, the grip safety, which comes out, the hammer, and then the sear disconnector and the sear spring. So I'm going to remove the mainspring housing right now. This is under a little bit of tension because of the spring, so just be aware of that. And on your frame here, you have your sear pin, and then you have your hammer pin, so let's go ahead and knock those out. Nice and easy. Set those aside for later. And then the only thing left in here is your sear spring and your disconnector and sear, and we're going to set these aside for the extra parts bin just in case something ever breaks or goes horribly wrong. So now I'm going to replace the mainspring that comes with the EGW ignition kit in the mainspring housing. So I have a smooth jawed vise right here that I'm going to install it in, and snug it up. You don't want it to be too tight here. And take a punch, and you're going to press in here. So this is the mainspring here, and you want to take these pins out. In order to do so, press in, and then you have the retainer pin there, and then slowly come on out here so it doesn't go shooting across the room. And that goes in the spare parts bin. And then take your EGW one. Now we offer a 19-pound and a 17-pound mainspring, so depending on which kit you get, it calls it out in the listings. If it's a 17-pound, the part number ends in -17, so that's a way to tell which one. The 17-pound mainspring is a little bit lighter, so the 19-pound spring is very reliable. It always makes the gun go. So if you're carrying the gun and you need to be reliable and consistent, go with the 19-pound mainspring. The 17 is going to give you the lightest possible trigger pull, but you may run into light primer strikes on occasion. We also recommend changing out to one of our steel firing pins on the Springfield Prodigy if you go with the 17-pound. That way it gives it a little bit more inertia and to help the gun go more often, but that's geared more towards competition shooters and people that want the lightest possible trigger pull. The 19-pound gives you a lighter trigger pull than the factory, but it always makes the gun go. So this kit, I chose to go with a 19-pound mainspring. I'm going to pop it in the mainspring housing, put that back in there. And actually I'm going to flip the mainspring housing upside down for this so we can kind of set the retainer pin in place. So you can just set that guy in there and then press this back in and just push it in with your finger. It's that easy. So now that we have the new mainspring and the mainspring housing, we can start the rest of the parts install and start getting the gun back together. Now we're going to put the parts in the gun and do our install here. So the first thing, I start with the disconnector here. The EGW disconnector is a ball head disconnector, which means there's a nice little ring going around the head there. And occasionally you'll need to take it down with some emery cloth to fit through the hole in the frame. So just get some light grit sandpaper and go around it a few times. Might take a little bit here and there to test it, but that's how you do fit it one shot at a time. So this one I already fit. I stick my finger in the frame here, and that'll help the disconnector rest on my finger while installing it. Get a little boost there. And slide that guy in. I get it so it's resting on the trigger bow there. That'll help out with the installation of the sear. Take my sear and drop that guy onto the disconnector. Yours will probably go on a little bit easier because it's not painted. We got some contrast there for you, so the sear should set in nice like that. And then what I like to do is I like to take a punch, and where the sear pin goes, slide the punch in. That helps keep everything lined up when you actually go install that pin, which we're going to do now. So take my sear pin and get it started, and as I'm pushing the sear pin in, I'm sliding the punch out, and now your sear and disconnector are installed. Next, we're going to take the sear spring and pop that in here. So make sure the fingers go on the sear. That's the crucial point, is that you want to make sure that this finger is on the sear there. If you don't have engagement on the sear like that, then you're going to run into issues. If this finger doesn't have enough pressure going down on it, then you may run into hammer follow. If this finger doesn't have enough pressure on it, then you're not going to have the trigger return that you need. So when you pull the trigger in, it's not going to bounce back. So you want to make sure that the sear one's bent down the most, then the disconnector one's kind of in the middle, and then the one for the grip safety is going to be bent up. But as long as you're on your sear here and your disconnector here, that one's up, you should be good to go. And at this point, I'm going to put my mainspring housing in, and that's going to keep my sear spring in place. And I'm going to grab my hammer next. So the hammer comes with the kit. The hammer strut does not come with the kit. We offer a hammer strut here, so I decided to put that in the Springfield Prodigy while we're doing this upgrade, and you can find a link to that part below. The hammer is fairly easy. It has a little bit of spring to it, so usually a two-handed job, one to push down with the hammer, the other hand to slide that pin in, get it lined up, slide that hammer pin in, and now I'm going to drop the hammer so we can get the strut to go into the mainspring housing here. And make sure that the strut is lined up in the center of the mainspring housing there, in the mainspring. And let's pop that pin into place. Get it started. Just a little bit of spring tension on there. So now your mainspring housing, your sear, your disconnector, your hammer strut are all installed and good to go. The next step is to install the grip safety. Put the bottom in first, and that should wiggle right into place. And then all that's left is to install your ambi safety. So we're putting the factory one back in here. We also manufacture our ambi safety that works in the Springfield Prodigy, so we'll have a link to that below as well. And there's a little slot on the side of the grip module here that the safety has to go into. So you're going to take the right side safety and install that first, make sure that it's nice and lined up. And once that's in place, we can take the left side of the safety and wiggle it on in. To do that, we're going to put the hammer back. And we're going to find that happy center again. So not all the way on, not all the way off, and wiggle them together. Now at this point, Since I don't have the detent, I'm not installing it, but you'll want to take that detent, and you could take a 10-8 armorer's tool that we have here, and you slide it underneath the safety to push in the detent, and as you're doing that, you can push the two sides of the safety together until it drops down enough that you can remove that, and your safety will go together as long as you're applying the proper amount of pressure. So our safety is now in place, and we can do our safety check here. So you want to be careful to not drop the hammer.
I'm dropping the hammer!
No, you're not!
On the grip module here, you run into risk of shattering or breaking the hammer since it's really hard, it's brittle. So you'll want to, at least for the first one, make sure that you're holding on to it. So that's our grip safety test right now. So if I have the safety down and press in the grip safety and pull the trigger, our hammer should drop, so that's good. And now we're going to test the thumb safety. So the thumb safety goes up into place. I'm going to press in the grip safety. Once again, put my finger here just in case the hammer drops. Pull the trigger, and now you know your thumb safety is working. Final test then would be to drop the thumb safety, press in the grip safety, and pull the trigger, and the hammer releases. And I would go back and cock it a couple times just to make sure that everything stays in place and it's working as such. So after you do that safety test, you're pretty good to go. I would put the gun back together, drop the slide on there, and then it's time to take it to the range and see what this ignition kit really did to your gun. That concludes our video on installing an EGW ignition kit in a Springfield Prodigy. It's the same thing for installing it on a standard 1911, not just double stacks, so you can use this video if installing it on your Colt or whatever 1911 you're using. I want to say thanks for joining us. Please like and subscribe. Don't forget to comment below. If you guys have questions or other parts that you're looking for or looking to get, feel free to reach out to us. And remember, everybody, stay blessed.